As is often the case in cooking, sometimes the seemingly simplest dishes are the most challenging to produce at a high caliber. Capellini with garlic and butter is an example of this. The problem is to get enough garlic flavor without it either having an acrid burnt taste or that kind of raw garlic punch that shoots straight up your sinuses. This version lands square in that elusive middle ground by means of a little-known molecular gastronomy trick that I explain in clear detail in Volume 3 of my cookbook series, but it's too complicated to get into here in this video.
The first step here is chopping up this leek with some of the garlic. This is more garlic than we need for this. We're going to use some of it for the pasta later and some of it to make this kind of pre-mixture. Now, don't get clever and think that you'll cut out some cleanup and just use the stick blender and the cup to grind the garlic and the leek together. That will not work. You'll create a puree and it won't react. It needs oxygen, it needs to be exposed to oxygen to react and create the substances that we want from this. So you're going to have to use a food processor for the first part and then the stick blender cup for the second part. Also, when you're doing this, not only trim the ends off, but peel any tough outer membrane off. This won't break up and you'll end up with stringy parts in the final dish. So you want the heart, the tenderest, best part of the leek for this. In here I have 100 grams of leek coarsely chopped and 4 cloves of garlic just cut in half, peeled, cut it in half. Okay, this is what you want to see. You want to see still visible pieces. This is not a puree. You want to see visible pieces so that an exposed surface like this. This is where it's going to happen. This is how it's going to work. Now leave this alone for about 5 minutes before you continue. Now after that 5 minutes is up and there's been plenty of time for this to react with the air, now we can add the olive oil, about 45 grams of olive oil in milliliters, and the white wine. I'm using a very dry white wine, bone dry white wine. Don't want sugar in this. Now we can puree this. I've got this mixture we just made. 30 grams of butter, 30 grams of grated parmesan, and I'm going to use fennel salt. This is an ingredient that you will find out about in Volume 3 of my cookbook. Other than this, you can use regular salt, or you can use MSG. Of the two, I'd pick MSG, but that's okay. We're gonna season it with the fennel salt at the end. The next step, now that the pasta is in the water, is to begin heating the pan for the pasta and melt the butter. And here we go, the butter's in the pan. Pan's on a medium-high heat of about 7 out of 10. We'll let this foam up first. And as soon as the butter comes up to foaming, turn the heat down to medium, number 5 on 1 to 10, and you put some of this garlic in. How much is up to you. Somewhere around a tablespoon of minced garlic, but you can go a little bit heavier if you really like it. You can go a little bit lighter if you don't. This is the first stage, though, of the flavors. And we need to toast this garlic in the butter. And you need to do this with restraint, somewhat slowly. You're looking for golden color. Don't try to rush it by turning up the heat, because we don't want to burn that garlic. It's not quite sweating it, because it's hotter than that, but we're not sauteing it in hot oil either. We're somewhere in between the two. Keep it moving. You don't have to stir it constantly, but stir it quite a bit. And wait until you see the first golden colors. It's been about 3 minutes. The smaller little bits here are starting to darken. You probably can't see that in the camera, but you can see it in real life up close. The tiniest little bits of garlic are starting to darken. That's time enough, because you don't want any of that to burn. Now we're adding some of that leek and garlic mixture, just a little bit more than that. This is going to cool it down, and of course, obviously, now we're going to start cooking this part. Meanwhile, the pasta is getting closer to the al dente stage. Now what I did is I turned the heat way down to 3 to keep it going and time it for the pasta being ready. This needs to cook on a very low heat for about 4 or 5 minutes. Make sure that you do not burn anything by turning the heat up. And unfortunately, there's no way for me to explain to you what the smell is when it becomes ready, but it's about 4 or 5 minutes at a low heat. You can go with that assumption. We're going to add the pasta to this in just a minute. Finally, the pasta is al dente. We're going to transfer it into this pan along with some of the water. Some of the water will be needed in order to finish the cooking of the pasta. And we add the first installment of the Parmesan cheese now too. And once the pasta has been amalgamated with that cheese, I'm going to turn the heat back up again. I'm going to add a little bit more of the water. Ladle full of the water. And now that final hit of freshly minced garlic goes in. This is the garlic that will be the flavor over the top of everything else. This is about 2/3 of the cheese that's in there now. The rest of it's just going to be used as a garnish over the top. It's been about 1 minute now, and I'm going to add the fennel salt, or MSG if that's what you're using, and this is now ready to plate up. Now this looks a little bit tight, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit more of that pasta water to loosen up a little bit. The heat's still off on the pan. Just make this just a little bit wetter before we plate it. And then we'll add the rest of the Parmesan, the final third, and a little parsley. Might need just a little bit more water.
The second volume of my cookbook is now available through Amazon and other booksellers. It covers the YouTube recipes from the last 8 months with more in-depth information. I received requests for the procedures on all recipes, and I've listened to you. Every recipe has step-by-step directions, and of course there are recipes that aren't on YouTube. But this is not just a recipe book. Far from it, as you can see from some of the topics scrolling by here. I'm certain that anyone who watches my channel and any serious cook will find this book a treasury of useful and new information you won't find anywhere else. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.